On behalf of the Department of Media Studies at Christ, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you to this workshop series on media literacy. My name is Joel M. Jacob, and I'm a faculty at the department. These are very trying times because of the pandemic, and we hope you're all coping well and staying safe during this crisis. Just remember that we are all in this together, and we hope to overcome this situation very soon. So, let me get straight to what our event is about today. Media Meet is the flagship event of our department. It's an annual conference that we host. We are entering its 11th year, and each year, Media Meet as a conference, we focus on a particular theme. And this year, we have chosen media literacy as the theme. Coming to our resource person for the day, uh, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Kailash Kaushik, who is my colleague and an assistant professor in the Department of Media Studies at Christ Deemed to be University. He's had an interesting journey in terms of his education. He did his BCom from the University of Mysore. After which he decided that communication and media was his calling, and so he did an MS in communication and media studies from uh, Manipal University, and then further did an MSc in communication and media studies from London School of Economics and Political Science. He further completed his PhD in media and cultural studies from the Florida State University in USA. He is passionate about media labor and the critical political economy of the media. So, without further delay, I'd like to invite Dr. Kailash Kaushik to take us through this session on media literacy and guide us on how to survive the information overload. Thank you. Over to you, Kailash.
Welcome to this workshop. I would like to inform you that this workshop is going to be more of honing of your skills, which a lot of you might already do, a lot of you already have. So we are going to just go through what is media literacy and the three things which we are looking at for you to, at the end of the workshop to just have an idea of our. Firstly, we need to have a good understanding of the mass media communication process and structure and how it is structured around in our society. Secondly, we need to critically, analyze the messages that we consume, and hopefully we'll get to know some tools through which we can do this. And finally, analyze and evaluate each and every message that we normally consume. So the first couple of slides which I will be showing is more of a reflexive activity. While I talk, I invite you to just think about these questions and these statements which you are going to see. So let me start by asking, how often have you heard these statements in your daily conversations, on social media, or anywhere else, right? I will not say that all of it is lies. There might be partially true. And by the end of this workshop, hopefully, all of us will have a slightly better understanding to either support these statements or to modify these statements whenever you hear them, right? Let me also ask you, how many of you have consumed all of these today? What this gives us is that we are living in a period in human history where we are getting information like never before. We are in an information flood. Now, when we are in such a situation, it can get a little overwhelming, right? What do you believe? Do you believe everything you see? What do we consume? Should we believe what NDTV is saying, or should we question it? Is this advertisement really true? Should I buy it? Right? Every message that we consume, sometimes consciously or unconsciously, we are constantly consuming it, right? We are understanding the messages. That is a very, very important part of media. Our understanding of the world depends upon the things that we consume through media. So this is precisely why media literacy becomes important. What actually is media literacy? Now, if we go to the definition, I have taken the definition from the National Association of Media Literacy Education, and they define media literacy as the ability to access analyze, evaluate, create, and act using all forms of communication, right? And we will be using this definition to understand the tools and the evaluation methods that we can use to consume media better. Okay, and our focus on this workshop, as you know, media literacy covers a very broad area. We will be looking at the production and consumption of media alone, because those two things, one, will allow you to understand the structure of the media, and two, allows us to also analyze what tools we can use. Media performs these various functions, and a lot of times it overlaps. It might be informing you about something, but at the same time persuading you. It might be entertaining you, but at the same time informing you, right? It performs multiple functions, not in solidarity, but actually it overlaps one over the other. Finally, we use media in a very collective way, right? We say the media is corrupt. We say the media is not giving us what we want. But a lot of times what we forget is that media is made by people like you and me. The media worker, the condition of the media worker, where he works, matters a lot, because the work he or she does changes the way we look at society, changes our understanding of the society. Now, that is something which does not happen with a lot of different professions. And this is why, even before we understand the consumption of media, we need to understand the structure of it. Now, let me ask you to think about this question. Now, on the left-hand side of the screen, you have an organic vegetable, assortment, which has been grown without any fertilizers. It is locally grown, it is fair trade, and it costs about 120 rupees, right? On the right-hand side, you have factory-produced, tinned, frozen, preservative-added vegetables, which is for 100 rupees. Now, if I give you the choice of which one would you select between these two things, obviously, a lot of us would definitely choose the one on the left, the organic one, for many reasons. One, we actually know how it is being produced. We know no fertilizer has been put. We know it is locally grown, which means somewhere close by. So it is fresh, right? It has traveled a less distance. It is fair trade, which means the farmer is paid whatever he is, entitled to. He might own the farm himself. So it is fair trade. No exploitation is going on. So you feel that, hey, I know how these vegetables are grown. So I'm going to get these because it is good for me also to consume something which has no fertilizer. But on the right side, we don't know what the factory looks like. We don't know how many machines are used. You don't know what chemicals are used. You don't know how old the food is, right? So you make a very, very conscious choice because you know how the vegetables were produced, right? Now, giving the same example to media, we consume so much media every day. But do we ever look at media like this? What are the conditions in which media is produced? Are the journalists paid enough? Are they working under pressure? We very rarely think about those things, but we do consume a lot of media without thinking about the background of it, right? And this is the reason why we need to look at the structure of media and how it functions. Now, in the majority part of the world, and especially in India, most of the media that we consume are run by enterprises which are profit oriented and commercial, which means majority of the media which we consume are funded by advertising. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantages of such a structure? What are the advantages? Obviously, a lot of you already know we subscribe for newspapers, and the newspapers cost about 5 to 7 rupees, per day, or maybe about 200 rupees a month. And if you look at news channels, most of the news channels are either free or maybe a rupee or two for the monthly DTH connection. Now, the media houses are able to give you these services and this information for that low a price because advertising covers all their other costs. So through advertising, they are able to give the consumers' media at a really, really reasonable rate. Now, that is a really good thing, especially for a democracy where we as citizens should be informed about the government, and the media should do the job of the watchdog of abuse of power, be it government, be it private. The media should keep us informed so that we as citizens can take informed decisions. Now, if this is the case, if advertising is helping media to ensure that we get media news at a reasonable price, it is good. But there are also problems which come up with advertising funding. Now, one of the major things which happens with advertising and any media which is funded by advertising is the commodification of media. What is commodification? It's nothing but media becomes a product which is being sold, right? And when you imagine it as a commodity being sold, it becomes like any other business. If a media house has to, be successful, it has to be profitable. Now, how do you ensure that it is profitable and yet make sure it covers all the democratic responsibilities that it has? Now, the one thing advertising needs is audience attention. What happens when this is the most successful format of media production? What happens is, because there is a competition, everybody tries to ensure that they get the maximum advertising money so that they can profit. Otherwise, you can't survive in the market. Now, how do you ensure that you know the advertisement keeps coming in? You need to ensure that there is audience attention, and a lot of times the audience do not want extremely analyzed good news pieces. Sometimes, it would be easier for them to show a fancy, really big photo of a celebrity to just capture attention. With advertisements funding the media, the content also becomes such that the audience attention is retained. And how is this done is what is normally popular is repeated. If you move to social media, even there it is the same, where Google and Facebook are also funded by advertising. And even though it is free, every time you spend time on Google, every time you spend time on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, it actually collects information about you and sells the information to advertisers so that they can advertise to a very targeted niche audience, right? Now, the major thing which happens in this structure of advertising funded media are two things. One, the journalists, instead of being the watchdog of democracy, becomes become content producers to ensure that there is profit, right? On one hand, they become mere employees who are made to create content so that advertising is ensured. On the other hand, we, the audience, become the product which is being sold. The biggest problem which comes up with such a structure is that if every news organization is fighting for profit, there is a possibility of a monopoly happening. And we are reaching that monopoly, especially where corporations are owning TV channels, corporations are owning newspapers, corporations are also owning all other kinds of movie media, like movies, like production houses, and everything. Now, the only problem with the monopoly is that it is detrimental and is bad for democracy because information comes from only one source, which is privately controlled and can be, altered anytime. And there is no diversity of voices, right? And nor there is any mechanism to check it. There is a flood of messages to catch our attention so that a lot of companies do get advertising revenue. Now, in such a case, companies do not, hold back from executing really absurd ways to catch our attention, and that is where media literacy comes in, right? In this structure, how the media is produced almost like a factory flooded into the society, and we are just getting bombarded by it. How do we go about ensuring that we don't get lost in it? I'll be using again the same definition, and I'll be going from one, of the five things which are there. I'll be going with each of them. Let's start with access. Now, the very fact that all of you are here on this call, on this Microsoft Teams platform, and are actually listening to it already says that you have a lot of access to the media. Unfortunately, although it might seem that it is common sense that everybody knows how to do this, there's still a lot of people who do not have access to a lot of media platforms. They might have access to a TV, but they might not know where to subscribe for a newspaper or even how to read a newspaper. So access is one of the first things which causes a barrier for people to access information. But more importantly, once you have access and you are consuming messages, the analysis and evaluation of those messages become extremely important. How do you analyze messages when we live in an information flood? All we need to do is answer 5 questions, right? These 5 questions are: who created this message and what is the purpose? What are the techniques used to attract and hold attention? What lifestyles, values, and points of view does the message depict? How might different people interpret the same message? And what is omitted and what is left out? Now, you might think, oh my God, every time I see a message, every time I read an article, should I answer all these 5 questions? Yes, but it becomes part of our information consumption if we practice it for a while. For example, when we go to the supermarket and you pick up a product, automatically you see the expiry date. You see when it was made, where it is made, what's the quantity, how much is the price, right? You do it almost unconsciously. Now, once you practice these 5 questions, when you're consuming information and media also, it becomes part of your consumption behavior. So let's take each question with examples to see what it actually means, right? Now, the first question is, who created this message and what is the purpose? Now, I have here 2 examples. On the left is a Deccan Herald article on the latest labor laws amendments which the Karnataka government did. And on the right-hand side is a Facebook post by the Center for Indian Trade Unions, Karnataka's division, which has put up a Facebook post about the same issue and legislation. Now, let's look at who created the message. On the left, Deccan Herald created the message. More specifically, Akram Mohammed, who has been with Deccan Herald for the past 3 or 4 years, and before that, he was in Indian Express, a very experienced journalist. He has written the article, and Deccan Herald has posted it on their platform. So that is who created the message. On the right-hand side, it is the Center for Indian Trade Unions, which created the message on their Facebook group. So technically, you don't know who specifically in CITU actually made this message. It can be their social media manager, it can be the president. We don't know from the Facebook post who created this message. But in the Deccan Herald website, you can clearly know who actually created the message. Now, what is the purpose? For the Deccan Herald, the purpose obviously is to inform, because it's a newspaper. It has to inform about legislation which is happening, and the purpose of the newspaper is to put forth what has happened in the government in the past couple of days. And as we know, this is not an opinion piece, because normally opinion pieces do come in a very specific section, and you know that this is a report. Now, but if you look at the CITU Facebook message, the purpose is not the same. The purpose is to push their view of the legislation and oppose the legislation through the Facebook platform. They are not trying to inform objectively, but they are trying to put forth their perspective and show their opposition. If you look at both messages have photos in them, very similar photos actually, but the purpose of both the messages are different. So every message you receive, just a moment of who created this message and what purpose, automatically we'll know how to evaluate these messages. Moving forward, what techniques does it use to attract and hold attention? Now, as many of us know, during the death of actress Sridevi, the news media took a whole new level of using the green screen. Now, these are all ways where the news media tries to hold attention. What lifestyles, values, and points of view does it depict? Now, this is a report, a news report from News 18's tech page, which said is Foxconn, which is a Korean company making Apple iPhone in India. Will it see a price cut for iPhones made in India? Now, this might seem as a very value-free, just a review of a phone. But if you think about it, what is the lifestyle that it is actually showing? It is showing that iPhone is supposed to be a very important thing, but it is too expensive. So if it goes down, it's a good thing, right? That's a kind of value outlet. There's also lifestyle which is shown that owning an iPhone means something, right? And there's also a very clear point of view. This is the point of view which is made from the consumer saying that, hey, it might be better for you because the price is going to go down. The fourth question is, how might different people interpret this message? Now, for example, this Business Standard article, which talks about the state of LGBTQ plus rights, it says that India does not have an anti-discrimination code. The different communities of people, different societies might read this in a different way. If you're from the human rights division, you'll be like, that is unbelievable, we need to do something. If you're from maybe an extremely religious organization which does not believe in this, you might say, hey, I think we need to weigh in on this and give some statement. If you are from the LGBTQ community, you might be like, yes, I agree with this. If we are from any other community, we might be like, okay, what is going on here? Let me read something. So every message is actually interpreted also differently by different groups. So another thing which we want to think about when you get a message is, okay, I've got this message and it is making me angry. Will it make somebody else angry also? Or am I getting angry for no reason? So it's a way to understand how a message is affecting us by just thinking how different people might interpret it. Finally, what is omitted and what is left out? If you take the same example as the first one, the Deccan Herald article about the labor ordinance. Now, in the article, the journalist goes on to say about the labor laws, and he does quote the law minister, H.C. Madhuswamy, in the majority part of the article. You can see the highlighted part. It starts off there, and almost till the end of the article, which you can see now, it is the quote of J.C. Madhuswamy. Moving, he also states according to government sources. Now, we don't know who this government source are, but we'll come back to that when we evaluate the message. Now, he gives a quote from the government source and he gives a quote from the labor activist Meenakshi Sundar. While going through this article, I checked, and Meenakshi Sundar is actually not a labor activist. It's Meenakshi Sundaram, who is the General Secretary of CITU. But there has been a mistake there. Now, we see that there is the labor activist, there is the government source, and there is the law minister. But the photograph shows workers whose point of view is left out. So, our understanding of, okay, this article is giving the points of view of the minister, the labor activist, and a government source, but not from the workers directly. You might argue that the labor activist is talking from the point of view of the laborers, but still it is not the same as taking the view of the laborers themselves. So the knowledge of what is being left out is necessary to understand where and to whom the message is being directed. Now, evaluate part is something which we do a lot, right? Now, the first thing is the article relevant? Second and most important, and this is where we know how to handle fake news, you check the accuracy of the message. How do you check the accuracy of the message? Now, one way to check it is, one of the easiest ways is to see if other news platforms are also reporting the same. Next comes bias. Is there a bias to the whole message which you have received and which you're consuming? And finally, reliability. Now, reliability is something which is also a social contract which is done, right? And in India, it's a very, very nice format where it is known that Indians use the internet and television to inform themselves, but the newspaper always confirms it. Now, once you have analyzed the whole thing, once you have evaluated all the messages, what do we do next? Now, the next two things is create an act, which we might not actively have a lot of role in, but especially because of social media, and the fact that we do forward and receive a lot of forwards, we need to be really responsible in this matter. So do spread awareness about how to detect fake and misleading news. And how do you detect and detect fake and misleading news? We just have to, answer the 5 questions, evaluate the 4 points, and you can actually figure out what is fake and what is not, right? And while we are creating media, be it on social media, be it we are putting an Instagram post, we are putting a Facebook story, we also need to be responsible. And we need to keep in mind that other people will be reading this, right? And finally, through all of this, we should also work together towards a better media ecosystem where, maybe the influence of advertising is not so much, maybe the amount of fake news is not so much, which will reduce if the society is more media literate. Now, along with these analysis and evaluation tools, there are some more websites and tools which you can use. For example, Alt News and Boom Fact Check, which are both Indian, do check news for facts and information regularly. So in case you find something, you can always send it to them and they'll check and tell you whether they'll check all the things. So for example, if you send the DH labor article that we analyzed to Alt News, they will call up the editor and find out what the government source is and ensure that it is a credible piece of information. In a lot of times, it might not be fake news, but they might be using a wrong image. They might be using the image of something which happened in 2009 for something what is happening today. Now, in those cases, you can use Google reverse image search, where you can take the image and put it on Google reverse image, and it shows you where the original image came from. Now, this is very important, especially in a lot of forwards that we get, which accompanies a very sensational image with a message, right? And this really helps us to find out what the image was about. Sometimes the image is cut out, which means it is cropped from a larger image. Now, these things can be found out through the photos being put on Google reverse image. But the very idea that I should put something on Google reverse image, the questioning comes when you analyze those 5 questions. When you look at the photograph and you're like, okay, who clicked this photograph and what purpose, right? You can do it for any media, right? There's also PolitiFact, which is actually an initiative by the Poynter Institute, which is in the US, and they do checks for political statements done in the US. I put this up because it is a very interesting source to understand how they fact check things which the politicians say. You can also check Fact Checker, which is an Indian website, which also does the similar thing. Along with it, there are many websites like India Spend, News Laundry, who also engage in active fact checking. You can go online and check for all this to just implement these tools along with the media literacy analysis and evaluation tools that you already have now. So the 5 questions for analysis and the 4 evaluation techniques will be more than enough to at least help us to analyze what we are consuming, understand the kind of media we are consuming, and to understand the society much better. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of you for joining us for this workshop. We hope you'll continue to join us in our goal to ensure media literacy to as many people as we can. And thank you, Dr. Kailash, for sharing your insightful presentation. So just remember, in this time of crisis, we are all in this together, and we hope we will overcome this very soon. Thank you for joining us. And till we meet next week, goodbye, stay safe.